1 hour later, when the enemy launched their surprise assault, they found loyal soldiers already, waiting. For the first time since the rebellion began, the exiled prince's plans failed. Standing atop the city walls, the crown prince slowly drew his sword and raised it toward the battlefield. His voice rang across the capital as he gave the order to advance. Below him, thousands of loyal soldiers answered with a thunderous roar that echoed across the empire. The final battle for the throne had begun. As dawn broke over the capital, the battle reached its final hour. Believing they had cornered the imperial army, the exiled prince's forces launched one last desperate assault on the palace. Instead, they found themselves surrounded. Thanks to the crown prince's leadership and Lady Han's insight, every hidden route the rebels intended to use had already been secured, and one by one, the traitorous ministers who had secretly supported the rebellion were arrested before they could open the palace gates from within. Before noon, the rebellion had completely collapsed. Realizing his army had been defeated, the exiled prince attempted to flee the battlefield, but he never made it beyond the western bridge. The crown prince intercepted him, and after a brief but fierce duel, the traitor was captured alive. Nearby, Juncio tried to rally the remaining rebels, but the imperial soldiers quickly overwhelmed them. Sun He and Miyun were also arrested while attempting to escape the capital disguised as ordinary travelers. With the fighting over, the emperor ordered a public trial so the entire empire could witness the truth. Inside the grand hall, the conspirators were brought forward in chains. Faced with overwhelming evidence, the exiled prince confessed that he had plotted for years to seize the throne. He admitted that Miyun had been his accomplice from the beginning and revealed that both twins were his children. The court erupted in disbelief. Yi Jun stood frozen. Although he had already learned the truth, hearing it spoken aloud before the entire court shattered what little remained of his pride. The emperor then turned his attention to the events of 10 years earlier. The crown prince stepped forward and revealed that after awakening from his childhood illness, fragments of his memory had slowly returned over the years. Since meeting Yunha again, those memories had finally become clear. With quiet certainty, he declared that Yunha had never pushed him into the lotus pond. She had saved his life. Witnesses who had remained silent out of fear finally came forward. An elderly palace maid admitted that she had accepted Miyon's silver to give false testimony, while another servant confessed that he had seen Miyon near the pond moments before the prince fell into the water. The emperor closed his eyes. For a long moment, he remained silent. Then he rose from the throne and slowly descended the palace steps. Stopping before Yunha, he bowed his head. An emperor bowed to a common subject. Before the entire court, he declared that both Unha and her late mother had been innocent all along. By his decree, Seorin's name was fully restored. A memorial honoring her courage would be built within the capital, and every accusation against her family would be erased from the imperial records forever. Yunha could no longer hold back her tears. It felt as though the pain she had carried for so many years finally left her heart all at once. When the court was dismissed, she found Lady Han waiting quietly beneath the flowering plum trees outside the palace. Without saying a word, Yunha stepped forward and embraced her. She whispered that there had been countless moments over the past months when Lady Han had reminded her of her mother, the gentle way she brushed her hair, the comforting way she spoke to her, and the quiet smile she wore whenever she worried about her. She admitted that it had often felt as though her mother had somehow returned to protect her. Lady Han's eyes filled with tears. She knew she could remain silent forever, but she also knew that her daughter deserved the truth. Taking Unha's hands in her own, she gently explained everything. She spoke of the Underworld, the shattered mirror, Hades' impossible wager, the Moonheart Blossom, and the wish that had allowed her to be reborn. Finally, she confessed that although the face before Yunha belonged to Lady Han, the soul within had always been her mother. For several long moments, Yunha simply stared at her. Then with trembling hands, she slowly reached forward and touched Lady Han's face. Smile broke through her tears. She softly whispered the one word she had longed to say for 10 years. Mother. Seorin embraced her daughter once more. This time there were no soldiers, no chains, no fear, only a mother and her child, reunited by a promise stronger than death. Months later, the crown prince formally asked the emperor for permission to marry Unha. The emperor accepted with joy. Their wedding became one of the grandest celebrations in the empire, not because of royal splendor, but because it symbolized justice finally overcoming deceit. The years passed peacefully. Seorin watched from the sidelines as Yunha became a wise crown princess, and later a beloved empress. She watched her daughter build the loving family that had once been stolen from her, and she laughed with her grandchildren beneath the very same plum trees where they had first embraced. She lived long enough to see happiness become ordinary and That was all she had ever wanted. When Siorin finally grew old, she felt no fear. One quiet evening, surrounded by her daughter, her son-in-law, and her grandchildren, she gently closed her eyes for the final time. Her final smile was peaceful. She had fulfilled the promise she made upon the execution grounds. She had protected her daughter. As the seasons quietly passed, another visitor came to the memorial built in Siorin's honor, Yijun. His hair had long since turned silver. The proud official who had once chased power now walked with slow, weary steps, carrying nothing but a single white plum blossom. The memorial stood beneath the flowering plum trees where Seorin and Eunha had once found happiness together. Without a word, Yijun knelt before the stone. His trembling hands carefully placed the blossom at its base. For a long moment, he simply stared at her name. Memories came rushing back. The day they first, at the promise he had made to protect her. The daughter they had, welcomed into the world together, and every choice that had destroyed the life they could have shared. Tears rolled silently down his weathered face. There were no excuses left, no pride left to protect, only regret. His voice was barely louder than the wind as he whispered one final sentence. "I'm sorry." The breeze gently lifted a few plum blossoms into the air. Yijun bowed his head one last time before quietly turning away. He never looked back. Some mistakes could never be undone. Some wounds could never truly heal. But even so, the truth had finally been remembered, and the woman he had failed would never again be forgotten. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself standing once more beneath the silver skies of the Underworld. Hades was waiting. He looked at her with the faint smile of someone whose wager had been honored. He quietly remarked that few souls had ever returned willingly after tasting such happiness. Siorin smiled in return. She replied, "I made a promise, and I kept it." Hades nodded. He welcomed her back, not as a prisoner, but as the advisor who had taught even the king of the underworld that the greatest force in any realm was neither power nor fear, it was love. From that day forward, Siorin stood beside Hades, helping guide lost souls with the same compassion that had carried her through every impossible trial. Because in the end, she had not defeated death, she had simply proven that a mother's love could walk through it.